stage is set for the 33rd Intersessional Summit of CARICOM Heads of Government in San Pedro Ambergris, Belize. The summit will mark the first time in 2 years heads of government will meet face-to-face. Under the chairmanship of Prime Minister of Belize, Honorable John Brasino, heads of government will discuss a number of critical matters on CARICOM's agenda. I sat down with CARICOM Secretary General Dr. Carla Barnett to discuss some of the issues heads of government will tackle when they meet from the 1st to the 2nd of March 2022. Good day, Dr. Barnett. Thank you for always taking the time to interact with the communications unit on issues pertaining to our Caribbean community. But before I get into really what we're going to talk about this afternoon, I wanted to ask you, how has it been for you these past 7 months?
Oh my, it's 7 months already. It's flown very fast. It's been very interesting. I've learned a lot about what we've been doing over the years that I have not been here. There is still a lot of work to be done, and we're working at it. And we have a good team. We're building that team even better, and so it's really interesting.
I know that when we sat down in April 2021. A few months before you assumed office, you told me about some of your priorities: food security, agri-production, advocating for the region's sovereignty in how it manages its financial services sector, etc. And I'm wondering, have those priorities been concretized, or have they changed as you settled in and really experienced firsthand what member states and to an extent what the CARICOM Secretariat have been dealing with?
Well, the priorities, as it turns out, mesh very well with the community's priorities. If we look at the matter of food security, for example, heads, even before I came, established a group, a ministerial task force under the chairmanship of the President of Guyana, whose responsibility is to see to the strengthening food security in the region, agri-food production, making sure that we're in a position to feed ourselves because of the situation that arose after COVID, when the shipping lanes got disrupted and we had difficulties in ensuring that food was going to be available all the time. I think that was the happening that place this in an urgent, but we've always known that we needed to be producing more of the food we eat, not only because we have to talk about things like rural development and ensuring that our farmers have a reasonable life, but also because it's a good area for investment at this point in time, using new technologies, green food production, for example, moving away from the old way of using a lot of pesticides and that sort of thing. That's a big thing because there's a growing demand for it globally, and it's healthier. Therefore, food security on top of the agenda. The issues regarding sovereignty over our financial affairs remains. We are still at risk of losing access to international financial markets because of de-risking activities, because of correspondent banking relationships that fall. Because of that, the more recent minimum global tax rate is another issue that we're dealing with. So that is very much a priority at this time as well. So, and of course, continuing to treat with COVID and seeing how we can ensure that our populations are vaccinated to the maximum possible, and that we continue to engage in that kind of behavior in terms of health protocols, social distancing. So we are sitting farther apart than we normally would.
And we are both vaccinated.
Fully vaccinated and boosted. Because that's important. It's important for us as a region to continue to protect ourselves, protect our families, our colleagues, in order to be able to treat with COVID. And they say we're going to have to learn to live with it. That means all of these behaviors that help us to not spread it becomes a way of life, but it's still number one priority from the health perspective.
Okay. So the stage is set for the 33rd Intersessional Summit in Belize. And it is really an occasion that holds much significance on several levels. It marks the first face-to-face meeting for heads of government since the pandemic struck our region in
Absolutely.
2020. It is your first meeting with the
Absolutely.
conference in their regular setting, regular intercessional setting.
Right.
And of course, the Prime Minister of Belize is in the chair. Really, it's a convergence of significant events. What do you think about those?
Well, you've said it already. It is a significant. It is very significant. It's significant for me because obviously I am from Belize, and it's going to be my pleasure to welcome heads, colleagues from the Secretariat, delegations from all member states to Belize.
COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic is still very serious.
Yes.
It's still a very serious concern. And member states are starting to adopt more pragmatic responses based on how the virus is evolving, the level of immunity citizens are perceived to have developed, and the reality that the tools that we have been using to prevent the spread of the ever mutating virus are no longer justifying the cost of social disruption, diminished classroom experiences, and the economic impact. How are the discussions around COVID-19 being framed for heads of government?
Well, there are a number of things. One is that there are still a set of very young children who have not been able to be vaccinated at the rate that we would want. That's a 5 to 11-year-old. So that's a priority. The idea that all our member states seem to be saying is that we would want to get schools back to normal, but as safely as possible. And therefore, vaccinations is a part of that. So that's one of the priorities. The other priority, of course, is ensuring that as we open up our economies even more and more, as we have to, that we are incorporating and ensuring that social behavior is in keeping with the reality of a pandemic. We really cannot stay locked up, because if we stay locked up, people have to produce, they have to eat, they have to do their business every day, and you can't do that in an extremely constrained social setting. Therefore, the notion that we have to free up, that we have to open up, makes sense. But we have to do it in keeping with what the scientific information says about how the pandemic is evolving, how the virus itself has evolved, and what the main concerns would be, which continue to be, we have to protect our most vulnerable populations.
Indeed. And in addition to COVID-19, regional security and the situation in Haiti are other critical concerns going into this intercessional meeting. I know there have been a few meetings on Haiti and security. Recently, we had the meeting of Consley. How are heads of government approaching these very critical issues on security and Haiti?
Well, let's separate, because security is wider than Haiti. There's a particular security issue in Haiti that we can talk about. But generally, as a region, one of the things that we've experienced in the COVID period is a rise in crime and violence, social violence in particular. But there seems to be a suggestion that illicit trafficking has increased, illicit trafficking in drugs and in persons has increased. So that's a matter that heads are going to be discussing very closely to see the extent to which enhanced cooperation can help us to treat with some of those issues. And the issue in relation to Haiti is one that is really very concerning to CARICOM, because Haiti is a member state. It's a member state that we would want to be able to assist in the way we know how, because we are a set of countries that for a long time have said elections is the way we choose our leaders, that have said we want to live in peace, law and order, good governance, all of those things. And those are the issues that arise in every single international conversation that I have had since I've been here in relation to Haiti. So the conversation will be had with the representatives of Haiti. The conversation will be had, and we will discuss to see the extent to which we can be more helpful than we've been in the past, because, as I say, Haiti is a member of the community, and we need to be as as engaged and as helpful as we can be.
Okay. And CSME is on the agenda.
Always.
CSME is still viewed as the best option for building economic resilience in the
Even more
region.
now.
Yes.
Even more now, because I think what the COVID pandemic has emphasized for us is the real importance of being able to support one another, combine our efforts in economic development, invest in each other's countries, making sure that where there are opportunities, those opportunities are shared. Where there are risks, we address them together. Because at the end of the day, within the CSME, that's really about our future. And we learned it as we battled to get access to vaccines, for example. We learned it as we had to treat with the food security issue, that at the end of the day, we have to take care of ourselves. And one of the key parts of taking care of ourselves is ensuring that we develop the CSME as best we can. And yes, we admit upfront that there have been delays in implementing key aspects of it. I was a part of a discussion a few days ago with the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee, and I would have to tell you that every single Prime Minister, every single minister, every person around the table recommitted to CSME, because people understand more than ever now that in fact it is critical for us to get the CSME going and properly, because the advantages are there.
Well, you've answered the question I didn't even ask on CSME. But I know agriculture, food production is another critical issue.
Yes.
And I want to get your take on what I believe is a very interesting event we saw playing out in St. Vincent and the Grenadines recently, where there was an oversupply of vegetables on the local market at a time when they were recovering from the La Soufrière eruption, and at a time when there was, the whole supply chain shortages. I'm asking that in relation to what are heads of government going to do when member states start to push their food security agenda and we have this glut on the market? Are we thinking at the same time about increasing interregional trade and, increasing exports?
You're asking me the question you know the answer for. Absolutely. There would have been gluts in some places, shortage in other. One of the things that happened as a result of the pandemic in our member states and globally, a lot of persons who had a little piece of land decided to grow food. Because one, they had to use their time productively, and two, as incomes fell, they need to have a little bit of fresh fruit and vegetables. If you could grow it yourself, it was helpful. So we saw that in as much as we saw it in other parts of the world, we saw it in the Caribbean. We saw little businesses of all kinds grow as a result of needing to find productive ways to use your time and needing to generate some level of income when the normal income sources had fallen. So yes, we would have had some glut somewhere, some shortages. We've always known that we have a transportation issue in the development of the CARICOM single market. If you can't get factors of production, people, finance, labor, if you can't get the factors of production to move, then you really can't talk about taking advantages in different places. And therefore, the transportation of people and transportation of products becomes really important. That's high on the agenda at this time. I know that we've talked about it several times in the past. I think, again, because of the impact of COVID and the disruptions that occurred, transportation of food in particular is really on the agenda, but not only food and people. So if there's a glut in St. Vincent, there really ought to be no reason for that extra not to go to St. Lucia or Barbados or some other place. And the ministers of agriculture have been, and the officials have been talking about all of the things that need to be sorted through, phytosanitary stuff, for example, to ensure that we manage the movement in such a way that nobody's agriculture sector is compromised. but at the same time, the food has to move.
Mhm.
And so that's high on the agenda and is linked very closely with the matter of food security and increased food production.
Okay. Dr. Barnett, this has been a very interesting interaction as usual, but I know that there are other issues on the agenda. Would you like to shed light on any other issues that heads are
No.
going to be discussing?
I think we've discussed most of them. I think a couple of the things that we have not talked about, recurring issues on the heads agenda, such as the border issues, those the heads are going to receive updates on that. There's going to be a meeting immediately following the CARICOM heads of government meeting. There's going to be a CARICOM SICA meeting, which is a meeting of the two large integration groups in Central America and the Caribbean. And the reality is that the CARICOM countries and the Central American countries together probably circle the Caribbean Sea. And therefore, there's a commonality there that we have to recognize and see how we can work together better to get mutual advantage out of that. And so there's a long conversation that has taken place about increasing collaboration and cooperation between Central America and the Caribbean. The heads meeting takes place in Belize. Belize is uniquely placed because Belize is a member of SICA and a member of CARICOM. And so who knows, maybe we get enhanced cooperation coming out of the meeting as well.
Is there going to be any special guests of the heads of government?
Yes, we're going to have special guests at the CARICOM SICA meeting. The UN Secretary General is going to be visiting in that audience, and as well there's going to be a link with the President of Argentina. And so those are the two special guests for the CARICOM SICA meeting. For our own meeting, no.
Okay. And I know that we are just coming out of COP26. Is there going to be any follow-on discussions from what happened at COP?
There will be a discussion of the COP agenda, not focusing only on what happened in COP26, but more how we prepare for COP27, which is coming up and will be here quicker than you can imagine. And the issues that are of the highest priority for us, which is the imperative of controlling emissions so that we don't have global warming proceeding as fast as it is, because, you know, we say 1.5 to stay alive. Well, the trajectory that we're on will have us in excess of 1.5. And for us, that's existential. It means that we will be losing coastline, losing land, risking people's lives, treating with the impact of global warming on agriculture and health and all of those things at a much quicker rate. And therefore, the issue of mitigation, adaptation, treating with the impact on governments having to be able to finance response to that is high on the agenda. And so we're preparing for COP27.
Okay.
Yes. Again,
thank you so much for sparing the time during.
I have to do it. Can I just end by saying this? One of the things that I set out to do when I came on board is to reach out more frequently through the media, through social media channels, however I can, because I would really want to see a broader range of stakeholders in the community being comfortable in terms of the knowledge of what we're doing, being able to advocate for things that need to be done, being able to tell us if we're doing things that we ought not to be doing or not doing it in the right way, because that is how we ensure that we are reaching the people we are supposed to be reaching. So I will always try to make time. And I am looking forward to engaging with the media.
Yes, I know you have a meeting ahead of the conference.
Yes, I'm told that that's being arranged. And of course, there'll be the usual media engagement several times in the year as we move ahead, because I really do believe that we need to be more regular in our interaction with our community stakeholders, including the media.
Indeed. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching. Visit our news site at today.caricom.org and our website at caricom.org. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more updates on the 33rd Intersessional Meeting of CARICOM Heads of Government from the 1st to the 2nd of March 2022 in San Pedro, Belize.